Okay, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of when you stepped down as Canyon County prosecutor. So just kind of take me back in that time. What was your mindset at this time a year ago before you actually stepped down?
I'll tell you, this time a year ago, I faced one of the most difficult choices that I've ever faced in the course of my life. I was the elected prosecutor in Canyon County. I was sideways with the county commissioners about this Napa contract, and I was faced with the option of staying on as the Napa prosecutor but losing the Napa contract and the raises for my people working in the office that were funded by that contract, or leaving office but allowing my vision of a unified prosecutor's office to continue in place. So tough decisions on the table at this time last year, and ultimately, as everyone knows, I decided to resign.
Do you still think now that that was the best way to go?
Thinking back, at the time I was primarily interested in protecting my employees, the people who had worked so hard for me at the prosecutor's office, and to the extent my decision protected them and allowed them to maintain their salaries, I have no regrets. I do, and sometimes looking back, wish I would have stayed on as the elected prosecutor inside as part of government, one, to see the rest of my vision realized, and two, to be able to give people in the community information that they could trust coming from their government about what really happened and the reasons behind my decision.
Well, along those lines too, you had said that there are people in the community that know the truth of what went on. What is the truth? What can you say to that?
You know, there's not a lot with the pending litigation that I can talk about. I've got a special prosecutor investigating. I have a bankruptcy trustee suing the county. I have my own tort claim against the county. And as an attorney, I'm limited in what I'm able to say because pretrial publicity is discouraged because you want judges and juries to make the decisions based on the evidence. So I can't really talk much about the facts of the case at this point in time.
But you are indicating at this point that you may run for this position yet again. What is going on in that thought process?
As we reach the 1-year anniversary, supporters from the community have come to me and said, John, you had an expanded vision. You never realized that vision. Why don't you think about getting back in front of the pulpit, see if the people would re-elect you and finish your dream, finish realizing your dream. They've come forward wanting to offer me money, wanting to help me campaign. And I have to admit, at heart, I'm a public servant. And to do that excites me. The prospect of going forward through an elections cycle and finishing what I started excites me and resonates with me.
If you were, let's put the shoe on the other foot. If somebody had quit a position, a year later they say, I might want to run for this again, what would be your reaction? Could you be able to be vested enough in that candidate to vote for them again?
I think for me personally, it would depend on what that candidate had done historically and the reason they left midstream. In this case, I have my side of the story to tell. The people haven't heard that. They would hear that during an election campaign. I think my record, as far as when I was the elected prosecutor, really speaks for itself. The changes that I was able to realize in Canyon County justice, the system there, I think were unprecedented in the history of Canyon County. So I think from a performance standard, if I were the person reviewing it, I would say he got the job done. But I do think there's this missing piece, this piece of why did he leave in the middle and what were the facts surrounding the Napa contract that will have to be answered. The voters will have to know and understand that before they could vote for someone like me and put me back in office.
And again, that's something that you can't go into at this point.
I can't talk in detail right now.
Would you consider running for any other political office? Is this a jumping off point to something else down the road?
But I hadn't really considered that. I felt called to be the elected prosecutor in Canyon County. Like I said, I had a vision that was never realized, and I think that vision could be realized if I were reelected. I don't know that I have that same vision on any different scale, but I wouldn't foreclose the opportunity down the road. I just don't see it at this point in time.
Okay. Do you know of any other counties that had entered into a contract for the misdemeanors that you had? Was this something that was pretty unique, or is this generally accepted in the industry?
Oh no, this is something that happens all the time. There's a specific provision of the Idaho Code that allows elected prosecutors to enter into these contracts with the unanimous approval of the county commissioners. It's something unique to elected prosecutors because no other elected official can kind of moonlight on the side and hold these types of contracts. So I did it in Canyon County. It happens in Ada County. Greg Bauer in Ada County has contracts to prosecute misdemeanors for the cities. It happens in a lot of the smaller counties where you have an elected prosecutor who maybe wants to supplement their income, and so they'll take on both the duties of the Valley County prosecutor and maybe the Cascade City prosecutor or the McCall City prosecutor. So it happens all over the state, and it's not something different. What's different in this particular case is the way the county commissioners and I ultimately got crossways, and it brought it to a head.
When you were going into debt and still knew that you owed the county some money as per the contract, at what point did you say, I'm in some trouble here?
I don't know that I agree with the premise of the question. There is no contract between me and the county commissioners. The only contract that existed was between the city of Nampa and me. The county at the 11th hour claimed I owed additional funds. I think that's a debt collection issue like in any other civil arena in the state of Idaho or in the United States. They say I owe the money, I say I don't, and we're in the process of letting the legal system get to the truth.
Okay. For the past year, you've said that, and you have been pretty tight-lipped about this. Do you wish you had spoken out about this earlier? And you also mentioned, too, that I think what you called it was the Canyon County political machine was kind of fueling this, along with some members from the press. What specifically can you give us examples in this?
Sure. Going back, I reached a point being the elected prosecutor where I felt like my life was on display. Anytime I went out in public, I felt like people were watching. Anytime I did my job, I was being graded. Bob Henry was the gentleman who sued me to get my personal bank records. And I just decided to draw a line in the sand and say, no, there's going to be a part of my life that's going to be private. Seeing how things developed from that time forward, I wish I wouldn't have been so defensive. Ultimately, I don't know that it was as big a deal, and we could have had this kind of a discourse back then versus after I resigned. So I wish that would have been handled differently. As far as the political machine in the press, as soon as I resigned, rather than keep things confidential, exercise some discretion and allow us to explore what happened and what might be a possible resolution, the county and the political machine came out right out of the gate and started firing at me, saying I had done something dishonest, I'd embezzled funds, I owed the county all this money, when they knew there was a dispute that had to be resolved. I don't think that was helpful. I don't think it was productive. And I think it's prevented the county commissioners and other elected officials who participated in that. It's left them in a position where it's difficult for them to save face and find a back door and reach a resolution at this point. As far as members of the media, they've soaked up everything that the counties had to say and put it out there, knowing full well that I can't comment at this point in time. And so there's been a one-sided presentation. I don't think KBOI has been part of that. I particularly point a finger at the Idaho Press Tribune. Anytime any one of my supporters would submit something that would be positive toward me, the paper would refuse to run it. And anytime the county would say something or their attorney would say something, it's not only in the paper front page, but it's on their website for everyone to see.
So why would you come out now if you can't speak about specifics?
Right now, I feel like I've had enough. I've been in limbo for a year. I've been in a prosecutor's office. I've been a special prosecutor before. These types of decisions shouldn't take this long. The system shouldn't have me in limbo. It shouldn't have the people in Canyon County guessing about what happened. And so the one-year anniversary seemed significant to me. I've been sitting here a year, what feels like treading water for a year, waiting for answers, waiting for my chance to tell my side of the story. And I just, at one point, said, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And so I'm speaking out a little bit, as much as I'm allowed, and promising people that when the time is right, when I'm able to ethically, I'm going to give them the rest of the story.
Are there any questions that you haven't been asked by the media that you would like to address?
You know, I think one thing the media hasn't asked, or maybe I haven't answered in response to their questions, I would like to encourage people to get out there and take a look at the public record. I can't comment a lot about the merits of the case, but so much of what I did was done in the public eye. Anything that had to do with the Napa contract was done in open public meetings, and people could have come and listened or contributed or debated the issues, but I didn't do anything in executive session behind closed doors. And so there's a really good public record of what went on and what everyone's understandings were. And I invite people to take a look. The Idaho Press Tribune probably still has everything on their website. You want to know, if you look about, for example, with this whole issue of was there a crime committed when I left office? Check in the record and see whose money we're talking about here. Who was the person that the money was paid to? Who got the 1099 at the end of the year and is ultimately responsible to pay all the taxes on the money? And then apply your common sense and reach your own conclusions. The evidence, to some extent, is already out there in the public record. And so I encourage people to stop just being spoon-fed by the media machine and by the political machine. Start thinking for themselves, and if they want the answers in advance, look at what's in the public record.
A lot of people who saw that contract said it didn't sound like a good idea. Was the contract your push, or was it the county's push to enter into it?
The contract was my idea. As I went into office, it was my vision to have a unified prosecutor's office, one prosecutor prosecuting all the crime within Canyon County. It was my push. As far as how the payments were going to be made, I think that was a collaborative decision between the county commissioners, me, and the city of Nampa. And ultimately, I think we reached an agreement that is supported by the law, which again is that the prosecutor gets to have contracts with the city, and that's what we set up. You know, there's kind of this underlying issue going on, this driving force, this bias in the background that doesn't get a lot of attention in the press. But when I bid on the contract, just my bid alone saved the Canyon County taxpayers a lot of money. Over the course of the contract, millions of dollars were saved. But in the course of reducing the cost to the taxpayers and taking over the contract, a private firm that was being paid a whole lot more lost the contract, which ended up being motive to attack me. And I suspect that as time goes by and we dig deeper, we'll find out that that's what Bob Henry was up to when he filed those lawsuits against me.
You could probably make a lot more money in the private sector. I'm not sure what the Canyon County prosecutor's salary was. I think it was right around $100,000.
$104,000.
The base salary,
Yeah.
$104,000. So if you're facing some debt right now, personal debt, why not just go into private practice where you could probably make a lot more money?
You know, again, I think it's part of it is the call to service and the passion I feel for doing the work of a prosecutor. You know, I'm not for closing. I haven't made the decision to run for prosecutor yet. I need to see what happens ultimately with the bankruptcy. You know, the bankruptcy trustee has sued the county. If the trustee's successful, it's possible that my debts go away, and being the prosecutor makes a whole lot of sense from an economic standpoint. But right now, again, I'm in limbo. I'm treading water, waiting for the system to work so that we all know what these variables are, and I can make an informed decision going forward.
So you're not going to make a decision about whether or not to run for Canyon County prosecutor again until the bankruptcy issue has been resolved?
I think that's only right and fair. I can't turn my full attention to what I'm doing as the prosecutor if the bankruptcy is ongoing. Also, if I'm in a position that's adversary to the county, I don't know how I would live up to my statutory duties of being the civil attorney to the Board of County Commissioners if I'm suing them at the same time. So these things all need to work themselves out, and ultimately I have a March deadline next year that I'll have to meet if I want to run for prosecutor.
Where do you see yourself a year from now?
Hopefully not treading water. I think there are brighter days ahead. Whether I'm running for political office, whether I'm opening my own practice again, whether I'm doing something entirely different than practicing law, I don't know ultimately what the future holds. I do hope that between now and the time the bankruptcy is over and all these other legal issues run their course, we have some answers. I hope I'm not in limbo anymore. I hope the people of Canyon County aren't in limbo anymore.